So let's go from top to bottom.
Okay.
So when I do my recordings on my videos, I always shoot at 1080, 30 frames per second.
Okay.
Okay. In slow-mo, I'm going to do 1080 at 120. So tap on that. Yep, 120. And then at record cinematic, I'm going to go 1080 by 30 frames per second. So yours is already set because you're a generation behind mine.
Okay.
Which is fine. I'm on a 14, you're on a 13.
Okay.
So if you go over to, let me see what else you got. I'm gonna go, you got your grid lines on that you turned on now. And I'll explain that here in a second. And then outside frame, and you're good. And then save all that and just go out. Go back to settings and go back to, you can swipe up. You can just go back to your camera and boom, you see you got your grid lines now? The reason why you want grid lines on that is because when you're shooting a person, like as an example, shoot your hubby again, point it at him. So, and if you were doing, say, an interview, the grid lines, you always want to have your grid lines intersecting at your top, just think of it as thirds, upper, middle, and lower thirds.
Okay.
So if you have him in the first third, over here, you see how that grid line there is in the point? If you put him on that, his head should be on that line, drop it down a little bit, scroll over that way, come back this way, yep. And the reason why you want to do that, so if me and him were talking, as an example, I'm just giving you an example. So I'll come over here with this, keep it where you sit.
Okay.
So if me and him were talking, you see how that looks, if me and him are talking, you see how he's looking at me? So now move your camera to where he's on that first section, that first point. Now, you see how weird that looks? It's like he's talking to nothing. That's called looking space. That's just give you one example of even when you're positioning your camera and how you're actually doing it, it matters.
Okay.
And because your final outcome is going to be, it won't look so weird. Because if you drop down, like if you put him on the lower third, the bottom line, you see how if you drop raise your camera up, and you see how he's on that bottom line? You see how you got so much ceiling in there? That's not natural.
Okay.
That's not normal. So you always want to put him, not center. Most people will center somebody on a picture. Depending on what you're trying to present, you don't want to do that because he's the subject. So you want to also get some of the background. You also want to get some of the looking space. So that's why you would use those grid lines to set up on that.
Okay.
So those will just give me an example. And always shoot, if you're shooting people, this is not always, there's no rules. If I'm shooting people, I'm gonna always shoot in portrait, especially if I'm shooting people at a landscape and I got good backgrounds.
This is portrait.
Yep, portrait. Now, if you go to photo and look at photo, you see how everything is clear? Everything is clear. The background is clear. Like as an example, he's sitting right here in a natural setting. You don't want the garbage can in the focal point. So I'm gonna shoot it on portrait because therefore it's going to bokeh out the background. So yeah, that garbage can is there, but it's not really hindering the shot.
Okay.
And it's gonna look totally different when you shoot landscape. So most of the time I'll shoot portraits in portrait mode. I turned it to the landscape, turn your phone to landscape, and you see your grid lines change. You see how you got more space. So if you're in a good background at a party or at a field, you got some nice scenery in the background, some trees. You wanna get all of that in the frame. Because if you were shooting that in portrait, you won't be able to see any of that. It may be something that's great in the background, like we have this nice, beautiful background wall. If he was standing up against this wall, you would want to get some of that in the shot.
Okay.
You know, so if you use that, just be around, that's all dealing with composition,